Hey y'all, I hope y'all enjoy these extra episodes this week. The reason I'm doing this is because on September 24th, the Nashville chapter of the JDRF, which is the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, is having their annual One Walk. And friend of the show, Rachel Mayo, who has been type 1 diabetic for over 10 years now, is trying to raise money for her team to take to the One Walk. Her goal for this year is for her team to raise $5,000. And last year, I actually took my body and my baby and we went to the One Walk, and I got to walk with her team and hang out with them. This year, I'm not able to do that, but I still want to help. And so I am using these special episodes to help promote her team and help her reach her goal. If you want to donate, the link to her team page will be in the show notes of this episode. It is also in the pinned post on the podcast Facebook page. That's facebook.com/farmanswerspod. So the link is there. You can click it. You can see the picture. You can actually see me and my baby as we posed for our team picture at the walk last year. She met her goal last year with flying colors, and this year I want her to do the same. So $1, $5, it doesn't matter what amount. Any amount helps. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for your support, and thank you for supporting Rachel and the JDRF and the research to help end type 1 diabetes.
Nothing you're about to hear should be taken as or used in place of medical advice. If you resemble anything you hear, contact your doctor. If you want to know what Walgreens thinks, ask them, because we don't know. Please wait behind the line for privacy.
You're listening to the Pharmacist Answers podcast. I'm Cynthia, the pharmacist, and today you'll get your questions answered and your curiosity cured. For people who have diabetes, whether it's type 1 or type 2 diabetes, Thanksgiving is exciting and fun, but it can also create a lot of stress. And so while some of the information people with diabetes think about a lot on a daily basis, it's kind of good information for us to have even as someone who doesn't have diabetes. One, because it makes us more compassionate for those that do have diabetes around us, and we can be empathetic and we can be gracious to them in their struggle. But also, it's good for our own health when we know what around us actually affects our blood sugar, because even being someone that doesn't have diabetes, your blood sugar level affects different things in your life. It affects how tired you are. It affects how much your brain can focus when you're trying to do something really important. The blood sugar fluctuation for people with diabetes and even people that without, blood sugar fluctuations can kind of really wreak havoc on your life if you're not eating appropriately, or if you don't really understand exactly what the foods are doing for you. And having low blood sugar, hypoglycemia, which hypo means low, glycemia is blood sugar, which glyc is sugar, emia means blood. So hypoglycemia, low blood sugar, is definitely something that people suffer with for all kinds of unknown reasons. Sometimes it's a metabolism rate reason. Other times, nobody's really sure. So knowing the types of foods that you eat and knowing how it's going to affect your blood sugar and how fast, whether it's somebody with diabetes or without, those effects really can affect your productivity, your moods, and those kinds of things. So there are 3 main energy sources in your food. 3. Carbohydrates, fats, proteins. So carbohydrates, that's your starchy foods, your sugary foods, and those are the ones that everybody's like, oh, this is all bad. Carbohydrates are bad for all kinds of reasons. They aren't inherently bad. Foods that are considered carbohydrates contain certain vitamins that we need, so you can't just cut them all out, because then you'll have a deficiency in another area. But carbohydrates turn directly to sugar. Carbohydrates are usually some complex form of sugar. We call them complex carbs and simple carbs, but they're complex sugars. So in chemistry, for something to be labeled as sugar, it has certain molecules and like oxygens and hydrogens and things like that in certain places. Also contains carbon. And so sugar is a molecule that's in a certain shape with a certain characteristic on the outside. The type of sugar that your body uses the most efficiently is glucose. So any sugar that you consume, your liver has this nice little mechanism and technique that it can do to turn any kind of sugar that you consume that's in that generalized shape into glucose. So you eat carbs, your liver immediately knows how to turn it into glucose, and then the glucose goes out into the body, and then it goes into places. Glucose is what all of your cells use to create energy. But the only way for the glucose to get into the cell is for insulin to be there. So that's why diabetics have a problem with glucose and why blood sugar is such a problem. So carbohydrates obviously increase your blood sugar, and because your liver is really efficient at turning one sugar into another type of sugar, it can raise your blood sugar really fast. So you get that sugar high and you feel really energetic, but then you come down the other side of that roller coaster and you end up feeling really tired and really run down, and like your energy has just been completely drained out. So carbohydrates turn straight into sugar in your bloodstream and raise your level, which that sugar gives you energy if your body's able to use all of that sugar for energy, but it's very short-lived. So you end up with like this roller coaster kind of blood sugar goes up, blood sugar comes down, blood sugar goes up, blood sugar comes down. That kind of energetic roller coaster can make you feel kind of crummy. The second type of energy source in your food is your fats. Fats do two different things for people with or without diabetes, but specifically for patients with diabetes if they're using insulin. Fat can also go through a process and be turned into sugar if the body needs it as an energy source in that respect. But the other job that insulin has, other than taking care of the sugar in your body, is fat storage. So you eat fat, your body uses some of it, does some things with it, then anything that's left over, it's insulin's job to tell it where to go and to be like, sit over here in the corner for a while until we need you. That's one reason why having the right balance of carbs and fats in your diet, so you're not storing more fat, you're actually burning your fat stores, and that is where weight loss comes in. So the fats affect blood sugar in two ways. One, because it can be turned into sugar if the body doesn't have any fast sugar around. And two, because the insulin gets distracted trying to store it. So then insulin's not focusing on letting the sugar into the cells so they can use it. So really heavy fatty meals can make you feel sluggish because your body is focusing on all of this fat that you just consumed, like a really greasy meal or something that's like high in fried foods. Because the insulin in your body is focused on dealing with the fats, and then there's all this sugar around saying, hey, I can give you energy if you just let me in, but the insulin's distracted doing something else. So usually a really high-fat meal or fried food meal makes you feel really crummy after you eat it for that reason. And if you're not used to eating lots of fried foods, then it can make you feel crummy for other reasons too. But your energy doesn't get boosted from those foods as much because it gets sidetracked trying to do this other thing with the fats versus sending the energy to all the places in your body so it can do work and you feel energized. And then the third energy source is proteins. And proteins are the counterbalance to the carbs. They're like, you need high protein meals. And high proteins are good in keeping your blood sugar stable because they don't turn to sugar so fast that it spikes your blood sugar. So if you eat proteins with your carbs, then the carbs are going to metabolize slower because the body's having to work on both of them at the same time. So the carbs get kind of like backed up in the traffic jam and don't just rush your bloodstream with all of the sugar to give you that sugar high. But proteins, there's a process that your liver can do to proteins that's called gluconeogenesis. And these are big fancy words, and you say them and you can impress people. Gluco, sugar, neo means new, genesis means creation. So your liver can create sugar out of a protein if it needs to. Gluconeogenesis. If you just say, well, I'm not going to eat anything else because I don't want to get fat and I don't want it to affect my blood sugar, so I'm just going to eat proteins, you're out of luck because your body will learn to get sugar from it, because glucose, again, is the main source of energy that your body uses. So if you don't feed it glucose that it can access easily, it will find a way to make it. And that's why the liver has that process. So proteins in a balanced meal, again, can lead to a slower increase in your blood sugar, so you have a more stabilized energy influx, so you feel energized for longer, or your endurance of whatever task you're doing, you have longer endurance instead of having that crash and being like, oh gosh, I'm tired all of a sudden. That's how the three main energy sources can affect your blood sugar. There's two other things that we consume on a regular basis, and probably even more so during the holidays, that can affect blood sugar. One is caffeine. There's some controversy as to what caffeine does, but there's something about consuming caffeine that distracts your body, and then the insulin doesn't work as efficiently to let the sugar into your cells. So the sugar hangs around in your bloodstream longer and doesn't get any work done. So where the caffeine increases your heart rate and you have that false sense of being energized, it's not a very efficient way of getting energized, because it distracts your body from actually using its most efficient source of energy, which is, again, that glucose. There's not a whole lot of information. Like, I even tried to read and study so I could explain it to somebody. They've got some really complicated assumptions of why it might happen, but they're not exactly sure the mechanism. I drink coffee for the taste. Well, if that's the case, then decaf, you probably shouldn't notice the difference. But if we're really caffeinated, if we're caffeinated during most of the year, usually during the holidays, we end up more so. One, because we're drinking socially, and two, because there's a lot of stuff to get done in a shorter amount of time. So the caffeine kind of tricks your body into feeling energized in that respect, but you're not efficiently using your energy sources. And then the second thing that we consume a lot during the holidays is alcohol. Alcohol is a funny beast because it can drop your blood sugar initially, especially if you drink it on an empty stomach, and make you feel more tired, because your liver is responsible for metabolizing that alcohol so it doesn't poison you. So the liver gets distracted doing that versus keeping a constant flow of glucose into your bloodstream. Because if there's extra sugar, then the body uses some of it, and then the liver stores the rest. So during the times that you're not eating and you've already used up all the other stuff that was floating around freely, the liver will then break off little glucose pieces and be like, here's some extra to hold you over until the next time you eat. But if the liver's concentrating on detoxing you from the alcohol you've consumed, then it's not efficiently sending out extra energy, so your blood sugar can drop. But on the flip side, it will then eventually jack your blood sugar way up, because one, alcohol is usually mixed in something that has lots of sugar in it, whether it's a mixed drink or a cocktail. Wine is obviously made from a sugar concentrated product because it comes from grapes. Beer is high in carbs because of all of the wheat and the grains and stuff that go into making beer. So where the alcohol kind of distracts your body, then as your body metabolizes all of the carb rich stuff that was carrying the alcohol, then that makes your blood sugar spike up really high. But again, you get that blood sugar rush and then you get the crash. Most alcohols are distilled from some kind of carbohydrate rich product, whether it's grapes and wine or wheat and barley for beer, or rye or whatever. There's whiskeys that are made from barley and rye, vodka's made from corn, so all of this stuff. But that kind of covers all of the stuff that we're going to be consuming this week for the holidays. I'm not saying change what you're going to eat for the holidays, eat what you want. It doesn't matter. But when you start feeling a certain way, maybe now you'll know why. Struggled with low blood sugar and did Whole30. That's only meat, fruit, and veggies. Didn't feel well most of the time. The thing about any kind of dietary change, and especially programs that are say, do this for this long, usually if you're gonna have a change in eating habits, it needs to be a lifelong thing, and not be okay, I'm gonna do this program once, like the cleanses and the juice things, and I don't know. It's very possible that when you make changes like that, you don't get the caloric intake that you used to, because your three main energy sources, carbs, proteins, and fats, when it comes to the number of calories that you get from each one, fat is always gonna have the highest amount of energy. A gram of fat gives you 9 calories. A gram of carbohydrates gives you 4 calories, and a gram of protein gives you 3 calories. So if you're cutting out all of the fat, you're essentially cutting out 2/3 of your energy source from your food. So you definitely have to pack in the veggies and the protein to keep your caloric intake up. We did P90X a couple years ago. You end up with like high protein because you're doing a lot of muscle work and low fat. But because we had packed in all of that extra protein, we had to make sure our calories stayed up, because then we were burning calories doing the workouts and then we would bonk because you didn't have enough, which is best for a person. Fat calories or carb calories. Calories are calories, and as I was explaining earlier, your body gets its energy from glucose most efficiently. So anything that you eat, your body is going to end up turning it into glucose. Because even when you burn fat and you're losing weight that way, it's not like the fat just melts off and runs off into a puddle somewhere. Your body burns through it, and your body actually turns a lot of it into some form of sugar for the body to burn as energy. Some of it gets processed through the liver and goes into your bile, which then ends up in your intestines, and that just exits out that way. But a lot of it does get burned up for energy, and so it has to be turned into sugar. But that's also why protein doesn't contain as many calories, because the body has to do work to get the energy out of it. Fat just happens to be like really concentrated when it comes to the molecules that are going to be manipulated by the body to turn into energy. The molecules in fat are just packed really close together. So that's why an equal amount of fat and an equal amount of carbs, the fat gives you more energy just because it's packed in tighter, if that makes sense. That's like the simplest way I could explain it. There's a lot of complicated things that go into that, but hopefully that kind of gives you the comparison of why it ends up being almost, twice of what the carb is and 3 times as much as what the protein is. So when you make those diet changes and you're cutting out one of those major 3 forms of energy sources, you've got to make sure that you fill in the gap, the caloric gap, with the other 2, because you don't want to end up in such a caloric deficiency that you can't survive during the day. The protein is the thing that helps your blood sugar stay more stable, even though you're eating the fruits and the veggies with it. Again, because of that traffic jam that happens because the body's trying to metabolize both. So instead of the fruits and the veggies just spiking your blood sugar, the protein kind of helps it stay stable for longer throughout the day, or at least until your next meal or snack. So there may be a couple of reasons why Whole30 kind of made you feel crummy. And again, anytime that you make a major change to your diet and your body, something that your body's not used to, your body can really flip out about that. 1, because protein tends to lead to more constipation. 2, certain vegetables can lead to more constipation, but then certain vegetables can lead to like the opposite of constipation. So it's just kind of like your body learning to adjust to digesting those types of foods and then extracting the energy and the vitamins and nutrients from those foods. It's an adjustment for your body. And that's why just doing a program and being like, okay, I'm going to do this for 21 days or I'm going to do this for 30 days and kickstart everything. Being 32 years old, 30 days isn't going to be a very long amount of time for my body to like adjust to starting a new habit. So that's why, at least on the medical side, it's all about changing for the long term and building new habits versus just doing a program. And I know a ton of y'all are smart enough to know that, but I at least have to say it out loud because there's some people that do jump on fads and just think that doing a 21-day fix or a Whole30 or a juice cleanse something is going to like kickstart it, and then they're not going to have to think about it anymore. Yes, Steve, you may ask a question. Trying to reset your eating habits. Yes, those weekly or monthly programs can help reset in that way. It's just for some people who say, okay, I'm going to do this and then it's all going to be fine after it's over. You got to keep up the good eating habits that you learned during that program, or your body's not going to benefit. Y'all have a great day. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Pharmacist Answers podcast. The pharmacy is now closed. You can post your questions and comments on our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/pharmanswerspod. Or you can email the show at pharmacistanswershere@gmail.com. You can tweet me or message me on Twitter at SinHendrix. You can find the show notes at pharmacistanswershere.wordpress.com. Pharmacist Answers broadcasts live on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 9:02 a.m. Eastern Time on the Periscope app. You can follow me at SinHendrix or view in your web browser at periscope.tv/SinHendrix. See you next time on the Pharmacist Answers podcast.